Thank you for joining us on our continued series, The Role of a Downtown Parish. With us today is Harrison McLeod. Harrison is a native of Alabama. He is currently serving as the 20th Rector of Christ Church in Greenville, South Carolina. He has been there since 2008. Harrison was baptized at Advent in Birmingham and grew up and was confirmed at St. Luke's in Mountain Brook, so we know that well. He went to a small technical school in Tuscaloosa entitled the University of Alabama. He received his MDiv from the Seminary of the Southwest in Austin, and also has a doctorate from Virginia Theological Seminary. We know each other through some graduate work and through mutual friends, and I think the world of Harrison and have a lot of respect for him. And he is in the context at Christ Church of being in a downtown parish, a very historic parish, not unlike St. John's, and I'll let him explain more about that, in Greenville. So I hope that his insights will be helpful and beneficial to us, as I'm sure they will. So Harrison, welcome.
Thanks, John. It's great to be with you and with the people of St. John's. I've worshiped at St. John's on many occasions, many years ago, and I know that it is it's a light in the Diocese of Alabama, wonderful parish with deep roots and tradition and wonderful witness. So it's a joy to be with you guys today. Thank you.
So the first question is, can you tell us a little bit about Christ Church, a little bit about your setting in downtown Greenville?
Our setting here, I think, would be very familiar to the family there at St. John's. We like you all, are a downtown parish. I think we have architecture that's very similar to St. John's. So any member of St. John's that came to worship at Christ Church on a typical Sunday would feel as though they're in very familiar surroundings. I think Montgomery and Greenville both have a lot in common. I would say in some ways both sort of Old South settings that are moving into the New South in ways that I think are really wonderful and transformative. Christ Church is, by certain measures, maybe 4,000 communicants. What that really means for us is that there are 4,000 people who would call us if they had to go to the hospital. People who really are active and engaged in the life of the church would be less than that, but in broadest strokes, that's probably our baptized membership. Like St. John's, we're multi-clergy. We're in an urban setting, so we really feel as though we have a ministry to the broader community. Very outward-looking kind of congregation. Again, I think like St. John's. And one that is concerned to preach the gospel to the city in word and in deed.
That's great. But that ties into the next question. Do you have a specific vision statement, mission statement, some way of articulating what that looks like in the context of your setting?
Yeah, we have been through several exercises over the years. I've been here 13 years now, so over that time we've developed a vision statement, which is to be a joyful community sharing life in Jesus Christ. And from my perspective, that aspect of joy is maybe the central tenet in that vision statement. If we were to look at John 15:11. Jesus says, I came that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. So I think we are a community centered on the experience and the expression of joy. Our particular mission is to embrace, equip, and empower apostles to serve Jesus Christ. And again, each one of those words was chosen with some precision and with some reflection and discernment. If the vision statement is a description of who we are, we try to use the mission statement as a yardstick to measure what are we doing.
Right.
So a different sort of collection of words that holds different meanings, and I think animates our life here. And each one of those words to embrace, we want to be our arms open to the community. We want to equip people for ministry. That's our job as a parish. I think that's our privilege, is to welcome people into a community, but not an inwardly focused community, but an outwardly focused community, and to equip people to use their gifts for ministry, and then empower them to then move out into the world and do that. And our identity as apostles, as opposed to disciples. And we would make a distinction here that that disciples are a collection of pupils. We study, we learn from each other, we nourish each other through our relationship with Christ. But then as an apostolic community, we are always called to move out into the world. And so those two statements have really been, I will say, instructive, and helps keep us accountable to
Sure.
how we allocate our resources. Where do we invest our time? How do we invest our time? How do we focus on our community, but the community of Greenville as well?
So this is, I'm going to play off of that just for a minute. You have a large community in terms of your membership. You have a pretty clear mission statement with I love the really three verbs.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Vestry measure that? And how does the parish at large embrace that? Do they feel like they are truly part of that statement?
Yeah, the mission statement is only about 2 years old, so we are still living into that. But absolutely, we have gone to some length to try to educate the parish into what those three verbs mean, and what that noun apostles means. And so we really try to lay everything beside that mission statement and measure it. So it doesn't matter whether we're talking about a Sunday school class, or how we fund our budget, or whatever aspect of ministry it is. We really do try to adhere to that statement. And I'll have to say, I might not have been the biggest proponent or believer in a mission statement. I'd always thought they were sort of maybe something you'd cross stitch and put on a wall, or keeping a binder on the shelf. But I have to say, I've really discovered the power in it when it's really shared, and it has really been very helpful to us in terms of guiding our ministry here. And so when we're faced with tough decisions about how do we allocate our budget, it's instructive to impose that mission statement on the budget and say, just like we would with our own checkbooks, do our priorities in terms of budget really reflect the priorities we've articulated in a mission statement? If it doesn't, that moves us in one direction, and if it does, we feel good about it, celebrate it, and move forward.
Well, that's helpful. Thank you. I think Christ Church and St. John's were built about the same time. So we've got, there are challenges certainly with facilities and aging, and infrastructure, and backflow pumps and heating and air conditioning pumps and stained glass windows and all that. Aside from those obvious challenges, what are some of the other challenges of being a downtown parish? There are other Episcopal churches in Greenville. There are other churches in Greenville. What do you find are the particular challenges to being a downtown parish?
I think, and again, maybe we'd share a lot of kinship in this regard. There was a point, perhaps in our history, where Christ Church and maybe First Presbyterian here were composed of sort of the Greenville blue bloods, the affluent, the decision makers, the influencers. And as Greenville has grown over maybe just the last 25 or 30 years, that has not been the case. We are certainly, I think, a cornerstone of the downtown community, but we are partners with other churches. We are no longer sort of the 800-pound gorilla. Sometimes we might want to be, but I don't think that we are at this point, and that's really to our benefit. Um, um, Economic circumstances. Greenville was founded on the textile industry, and the textile industry is not near what it was 25 years ago, and so our congregation is much more diverse. This is really just a long-winded way of saying one of our particular challenges is there are aspects of the Greenville community that still think of us as the old downtown blue blood church, when in fact we have all flavors of people, and much more diverse. And sometimes I wonder whether the broader community still thinks of us the way we used to be, as opposed to the way we really are.
And I would assume that most people they are very intentional about coming to Christ Church. They drive by other churches, other Episcopal churches. They've come from I don't know, maybe Spartanburg, wherever, but they come from all over because of what Christ Church represents. What do you think that is for them?
I think that,
in other words, what are your graces? What are the strengths that are drawing these people to make Christ Church a destination for them?
I think deeply woven into the DNA of Christ Church is the vibrancy of the gospel as expressed in our outreach to the community. And there are several illustrations of that. We had a wonderful woman in 1880 who gave us the money to build the South Transept. We're a cruciform church. We're in the shape of a cross, and so the South Transept didn't exist before 1880. She gave us the money on the condition that we not charge pew rent. That was a time when that was the common practice. So we still have numbers on most of our pews that indicate whose pew that was. The pews in the South Transept have a little plaque on them that says free. So we've always been concerned to bring in those people who may not have all the economic benefits that some of the rest of us do. The women of our church in 1888 started the first hospital in Greenville at a time where only the poor went to hospitals. If you had means, the doctor came to your house. And so again, as I say, sort of deeply woven into the history of the church and into our DNA is this concern for the community and a heart for really living seriously into Jesus's charge in Matthew 25: feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the sick and the poor, lift up the oppressed. That's been something that's meaningful to this parish. And I think as I would try to describe what our parishioners value is, that we are, while serious about Christian education and beautiful worship and things that we might describe as in reach, which are necessary and important, we never shy away from outreach either. And it's that combination, which I think is unique to a downtown parish.
Right.
And probably the stories I'm telling, St. John's has their version and would be able to tell the same story.
Yeah, in many ways, that's exactly right. How does so you talked a little bit about there's a and I think St. John, this can resonate with people listening to this at St. John's, and that is there's a perception that St. John's is old Montgomery, right? It's in many ways the aristocracy, the blue bloods of Montgomery, and at some level that's true, and at another level that's not true at all. So it's neither one or the other. But it does matter how other people perceive that. And so one of the things that we're looking at is, as all downtown parishes are, is people, especially post-pandemic, people have to want to drive to downtown. Our nearest neighborhood is 7 minutes away, 8 minutes away, but it also has an Episcopal church right sitting in the middle of it. So they have to drive by a Church of the
Right.
Ascension to come to St. John.
Yeah.
That's our nearest neighborhood. And so one of the things that we're looking at is how we communicate the breadth and the depth of what our mission is and what our calling is, that is beyond being an extension of, and Montgomery well enough, of balls or crews or just family ties, and how we change that in the community. So one of the things that we're talking about is how we bring a larger percentage of the community into St. John's for things that aren't necessarily Sunday morning. Whether it's music offerings, art offerings, speaker series, whatever it might be, helping facilitate pilgrimages for groups outside of Montgomery.
Right.
What kind of things like that do you guys do, and how does that affect your role in the community, in the larger community?
Yeah, I think we probably probably share lots of the same initiatives that you'd find at St. John's. We do our best to try to publicize and offer events. I won't say they're geared more toward the community as opposed to the parish community, but anytime we are able to offer, like last Halloween, we offered I can't even remember what we called it, trunk or treat. Obviously we're in a pandemic, and so that was a safe thing that we could offer, and we have probably more of a downtown community than Montgomery has. There really has been a movement in the last 15 years to move into downtown. But even still, we really try to blanket the community with an invitation to those kinds of events. We are really blessed to have a great person who is in charge of our communications, and so we try to stay in touch with the press. Again, probably like St. John's, I think too much we let the press talk about us, and we don't control the narrative. Well, we really try to take the initiative through press releases, through ads in magazines, local magazines, to try to put the word out to the community about who we are. We try to define ourselves as opposed to letting the community define us. One of the real wonderful things that we've done, and this is sort of a double-edged sword. We have beautiful grounds at the church. We've got 13 acres, which is a blessing and a curse. 10 acres are a churchyard, so not real usable space. But it's landscaped beautifully, and that's been accomplished over the last 10 years. So we have a garden tour, and we use that as a fundraiser so that we can maintain the grounds. But over the course of that weekend, we'll have 1,000 people come onto our campus, and just hopefully learn that our campus is a bit of a green space, a sanctuary in downtown Greenville, where you can sit on one of our benches and eat lunch. You can get away from a little of the traffic noise. So we try to offer specific events to the community, but also we try to be intentional about inviting people onto our campus, not for religious experiences per se, but for a garden tour or a tour of the stained glass windows. Like St. John's, we have beautiful stained glass windows, and people are always curious to look at them, and we try to capitalize on that.
Wonderful. So if I remember correctly, you followed a very beloved rector who'd been at Christ Church for a while. I can't remember how long, but for a while, when you got there 13 years ago. I'm new. I followed a much beloved rector who was here for a while. And I have permission to blame him for all the bad stuff that I inherited and give him credit for all the good stuff I inherited. So I've tried to do that judiciously and fairly. But my question is, what did you find when you, and this is kind of self-serving, but it's helpful for us at St. John's to know this perspective. What kind of did you discover about Christ Church when you arrived that you might not have known? And what things, and where are you now in terms of what you think has changed about Christ Church? You may have already alluded to it a little bit, but what's been the difference in the 13 years from when you arrived to now? How would you describe that?
Yeah, I did follow a rector who had been here for maybe 12 years, had done a wonderful job at leading this parish. And I try not to make too many comparisons between the church where I'm the rector and the church where he was the rector. And our stories are probably a little different in this regard. My predecessor really led this church through a very controversial time in the life of the national church. And I would say, and I think most people here would agree, that really took a toll on the church. People were tired. They were maybe suspicious. They had lost that sense of joy in the gospel and in community, sort of as a natural consequence of just exhaustion with
Sure.
sort of national church questions. So when I arrived, I really felt like it was my particular calling to remind people of the joy of the gospel and how that's expressed in the wider community. So in my 13 years here, I think we have recovered a sense of unity around the gospel, even as we have learned to embrace a broad sense of diversity. So unity and diversity, diversity and unity. It's been a real pleasure to be a part of that life of a place. And that may be an experience that's different than St. John's. I've been very grateful for my predecessor's stamina, his faith, as well as the people. They could have chosen to go to the church that they drive by, but their sense of this place and their sense of what's valuable here kept them committed, not to Christ Church, but to the gospel as expressed in Christ Church. And that's been really gratifying to be a part of.
Yeah, that's something I think we can connect to. I think every parish has gone through, in whatever way, shape, or form and manifestation, a process of change, a process of conflict,
Mhm.
and to be able to resurrect hope and joy from the ashes of that conflict,
Right.
is the work that I think that we have to do, not only within our parishes, but that's the story of the world in which we all exist.
That's just the human endeavor, isn't it?
Right. And so to draw those and make those make the good news for all people in that sense, not only those in the pew, but for those outside the pew, I think is important to remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, last question. This is a softball question. It's not on the ones I've sent you, but tell me all the things about growing up in Alabama that have served you well, and being shaped and formed by this diocese, that have served you well as a priest in the church, other than 18 national championships.
Well, I wasn't even going to go there, but I would say that one of the rare treasures in the Diocese of Alabama is Camp McDowell, and what that offers the youth who then find their way into the priesthood, and the clergy who are committed to that. I think when I think of the heroes of the faith, the people that really put a stamp on me, I think of Bishop Stow. I think of Charlie Douglas. I think of Ray Pratchett. I think of Emile Joffrion. I think of um, Doug Carpenter, who were just giants in their own way, and probably cut from a different cloth than you'd find clergy today. But their witness, their commitment to the church, and their commitment to their people through challenging times. I mean, I cannot imagine what it would have been like to be a priest in Montgomery in the midst of the civil rights movement. But those Episcopal clergy brought the power of the gospel to strained times and did it with grace and conviction. And I think that's an enduring legacy that I am continually grateful for, and I think is serve the wider church. If Alabama can survive and keep a vibrant witness, that's good news for the whole church.
That's a great answer. Thank you for that.
Well, it's from the heart.
Agree. I think for priests like us, we look at, for me in Mississippi, Camp Bratton Green, but still these giants of the faith. For me, is Bishop Gray Jr., who was the chaplain at St. Peter's, Oxford, and the chaplain at Ole Miss during the James Meredith riots and unrest. And there are people who stood their ground, rooted in the gospel, and it challenges us to do the same in the midst of different circumstances, but no less a threat to our faithfulness and our willingness to be agents of love and hope.
Well, and I think that's their witness. They loved you. Those people I referred to, even when there might have been vigorous disagreement, not about the power of the gospel, but maybe the politics of the day or whatever it was, but they knew that ultimately we're all transformed by God's love, and that was their gift.
Absolutely. Well, I said that was the last question. I lied. So do you think that I mean, for example, it was all virtual, but we had a very brief service of prayer on the day of inauguration with an African-American Democratic mayor and Bishop Ivy. I've promoted Governor Ivy, who is a Republican, and both of them read scripture virtually for an 8-minute prayer service that we had on the day of inauguration. It was not to endorse a party or a politician, but to support the nation and pray for this president, as we will for the next 4 years, just as we've prayed for the president the last 4 years.
Sure.
Just to begin that process. It seems to me that downtown churches kind of have that responsibility of articulating that the gospel in the midst of that tension.
Yeah.
At all times. Is that fair to say?
Oh, I think it's very fair to say, and I would say that may be St. John's particular charism, because you guys are the downtown capital city church, and so for you guys to bear witness to that is a way. It's unique to St. John's Montgomery. I love all of the Episcopal churches in Alabama, but that's you guys can bear witness to that in a way that Nativity Huntsville or Christ Church Tuscaloosa or St. Luke's Birmingham, it doesn't have the same rootedness that you guys do. And so I think, particularly as a downtown parish, but particularly as a downtown parish in the capital city, you've got an important role to play in civil reconciliation, which I think is something we all really need in these days.
Well, thanks. That's helpful. We are reflecting on that and trying to discern how God is calling us to be agents in that, to be a part of that. And so that's helpful to hear. All right, my friend, we appreciate it. Any last words?
Just
Roll Tide.
yeah. Well, again, I don't want to make this political.
That's right.
Again, I would just say thanks for the time to get reacquainted with St. John's Montgomery a little bit. Thrilled that you're there, and excited to see how your witness and that parish's witness grow and evolve together over the next many years. So it'll be fun to continue to share ministry with you.
Great. Thank you, Harrison, and blessings to you and your ministry in Christ Church, our brothers and sisters there. We'll see you soon.
Thanks very much, John. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.